Hey, welcome to Podnutz Daily for June 30th, 2008. I want to give the Skype phone number for those who don't have it yet. If you want to call in after the show or have a question, comment, tip, or anything of the sort, you could Skype me at Podnutz Daily or call 610-624-1689. Okay, went to my cousin's wedding last weekend in Ocean City, Maryland. I didn't party too much, so I'm feeling pretty good right now. So we actually had a good day today at the shop. A lot of customers came in and got a lot of work done. One of the things we did was had a Toshiba laptop and with a clicking hard drive. So we went ahead and replaced the hard drive and put that in. Now, he brought in his recovery disk. Now, every time you have a chance to use a recovery disk, if you need to reinstall an operating system, use it because it installs all the drivers, it installs all the factory software. And if you don't have the factory disk itself, a lot of times companies now, because I guess they don't want to make disks and ship them or they're trying to save on something, will put a partition on the hard drive that actually has the recovery disk on it, which is the recovery partition. And a lot of times you could just recover a hard drive from that partition. The bad part is if you buy a new hard drive, it doesn't have the recovery partition on it, so you actually have to have a disk. So if you buy a new computer and it prompts you to make the recovery disk, make that the first thing you do. You won't regret it. Trust me. So anyway, we put the recovery disk in and we started this computer up. It had it's got a Pentium 4, and a lot of the laptops with the early Pentium 4s ran really hot. It's just a hot chip. And if we sat the computer down flat, it would only stay on for about 10 minutes or so. If we elevated the bottom of the laptop to get airflow, then it would stay on. Something to look for when you see a computer overheating, a laptop overheating, is a lot of times the rubber nubs on the underside of the laptop come off, which actually lowers the height of the laptop down a couple millimeters, or a couple centimeters, or however high it raises it, and could cut off circulation to the fans to stop the cooling of the processor, and then the computer will turn off randomly. One thing you could do to make sure your computer's running cool is if it keeps turning off and you know that you blew all the dust out of the fans, there's nothing blocking the heat sink, there's nothing blocking the airways, the fans are spinning, is maybe buy one of those laptop coolers that they sell where they have fans built into them. You plug them in, you put your laptop on top of it, it's like a little pad, and you plug the pad into a USB port, and that powers the fans in the laptop cooler, and that'll handle that problem. Or elevate your laptop somehow, like replace the rubber nubs with something else, or buy the actual part that you need for the computer. My dad was the one who actually noticed that the rubber nubs were off, and that's why it was laying so low, and that's probably why it was overheating. A lot of old Pentium 4s were like that. The cores now are running pretty cool, so probably not too many overheat problems there. The power button on his laptop was also dislodged, which meant like if you push down to try to hit the power, it would stay pushed down, forced down on the power button, and that wreaks havoc when you have a power button that's continually just pressed in. It could be turning the computer off and you don't even know what's going on. So just make sure your power button is clear and not being obstructed in any way. Had an Acer come in today with a screen replacement. Bought the screen on eBay. And came in 2 days, installed that. That was a quick job done. Nothing more to say about that one, but let's see what else we got here. And the same computer, actually same customer, different computer. He brought in a HP power adapter for an HP DV6000 laptop. Now, he said the power adapter was burnt out, pretty much fried. And I can't remember how he knew that, but it must have been a power surge or something like that. But the power brick itself wasn't working. Whenever somebody comes in with a power adapter and says it doesn't work, I always check for a couple of things. Check to see if there's any exposed wire on the cord, and if there is, patch it up. Solder it up if you can. If there's nothing exposed or no bends or breaks in the wire itself, look at the tip and see if the tip isn't bent. A lot of times when people trip over the cords, the tip gets so bent that it doesn't make a connection, and actually the customer might think it's the whole adapter that's bad, but it's actually just the tip. So you could replace the tip. I'd like to. The bottom line is, I always if somebody has a bad power adapter, I always say I'll gladly take it if you just want to give it to me, because sometimes the brick itself is bad and other time the tips are bad. So if you gather enough and acquire enough of these power adapters, which aren't cheap to buy, they're like $70, you can pretty much cannibalize what you have there and make working power adapters if you know how to solder, so it's not going to come apart. So, for example, in his case, he had a bad brick, but I also had one before that had a bad tip. But the tip on his was good, so I took the tip off of his power adapter, just cut the wire, and then put it onto the identical power adapter that I had in stock that a customer just gave me because it was broken, and I installed the tip from his onto that one. Now, just make sure you do it with proper soldering, enough like electrical tape, and definitely use heat shrink tubing to give it a professional finish, because if you just wrap it in electrical tape, it's going to come unraveled. So I always solder the connections, make sure it's wrapped in enough electrical tape that the connections don't short out against each other, then put heat shrink tubing over it and seal it up so it's almost invisible. The whole job's almost invisible, and it holds that way too. The heat shrink tubing keeps it tight. If you just need to replace a tip and you don't have a tip, I highly recommend these Radio Shack. They're called Adapta-Plugs, and they're usually white, which is the opposite color of what you need, but they work good. They make them in almost all sizes that laptops have, except the Funny Dull and Funny Vio plugs. Most of the common adapters are size M, like Mary, or N, like Nancy. I've seen O eventually, or occasionally. So if you go to a Radio Shack, you'll see these all behind the counter probably, and they're all lettered, and they're called Adapta-Plugs, and they're like a little L-shaped tip for a power adapter. These are awesome. You could buy that's a little tip with two little prongs that you can insert onto the end of your power adapter and replace that tip. In other words, you could have one power adapter and like 3 different kinds of tips or 4 different kinds of tips. I like to use these because if you pull on these tips hard enough, they actually come separated from the power adapter without breaking the wire. You know how the Macs have, when you put on the power adapters now, they're magnetic, and if you trip over the cord, the magnet comes undone. So it doesn't break anything on the computer. Well, with these Adapta-Plugs, you have a better shot of not breaking the computer, because if you trip over it, the tip will come separated from the power adapter itself, but it won't break any of the wires. It's a replaceable tip. So I like to use them, and I like to tell the customer too, so they feel like they're getting like a better product. Look, if you trip over this or there's any damage to this, it may not break your laptop because the tip might come dislodged from the power adapter, and this way it'll save you money on the laptop repair. So that's one great way to fix power adapters with these Radio Shack Adapta-Plugs. They're like $6, $7. They're not cheap, but include that